The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome, everybody. Need to know on TKR. It's another Monday, albeit not an ideal Monday. All of a sudden, we've moved the show to Anchorage, Alaska, although I'm still sitting here in the same studio as I was in last week in Birmingham, Alabama. But of all things considered, it is a good place to start here if you're listening to the show in and around the Birmingham metro area. And especially if you're not, what a phenomenon this particular location is, where everything around us is under sheets of ice, the same Arctic conditions. But as late as Saturday night here, it was still in the mid to upper 40s. I think it even got close to 50 degrees on Saturday afternoon. And, meantime, Oxford, Mississippi, which is a short drive from here, completely shut down by this gigantic ice storm. So much power out in all kinds of places around the country, particularly the hardest hit apparently are Texas and Tennessee, which is, Texas is a weather pattern situation that comes right this direction. But it's very interesting phenomenon. Same thing happens a lot of times when there's severe weather, like tornado watches and things. Whatever the geographic or, atmospheric ideology is, a lot of times these massive storm cells come blowing across the lower part of the country, through Texas, through Arkansas, into Mississippi, and for some strange reason, right after they cross kind of into the Alabama border, a lot of these storms immediately get diverted just to the north. I've been joking for years. Some small towns up in northwest Alabama are always right in the crosshairs of all the major weather systems up around Jasper, Alabama, Hamilton, up in that area, and leading up into the border of Tennessee, right on line with Nashville. When we had the horrible tornadoes back, whatever year that was, that 80 separate tornadoes. Very little of that tornadic activity was here in Birmingham, except for the extreme north portions for that same reason, the abrupt turn of these storms. It's really kind of a interesting phenomenon. But once again, we dodged the bullet. We've had next to no precipitation. The cold air, as expected, has come pouring in today or overnight from Sunday to this morning. An Arctic front, which is just kind of blasted from north to south. So we are getting that, of course, because that's not the same pattern. But, to look at all the misery around the southeast and around the rest of the country, snow, a 16.7 feet of snow fell in Boston, Massachusetts yesterday. The Carolinas are getting hammered. It's just amazing that this particular anomaly of where we're located kind of saves us a lot of times right here in the Birmingham metro area. So it happened again this time. But I want to give my thoughts and prayers to everybody who is without power, especially. That's just a horrible thing to think about when the temperature's in single digits. So God bless you all if you're able to listen today, maybe on your phone or iPad or some other means that you've been able to keep the battery charged. A lot of ingenious inventions now. You don't even have to plug your phones in. I still have to kind of learn how to use it, but if I charge up this one one charging device that my son gave me a year ago for Christmas. It can actually charge my phone. I saw a couple things today of people that had no power for the last 48 hours that had actually gone out to their car in their garage and plugged their phone in to recharge it. So there's all kinds of creative solutions. But anyway, my thoughts and prayers with everybody that's suffering through this massive storm and that awful combination of a major weather front colliding with Arctic air, one moving west to east, the other down north to south. So a miserable couple days in store, but we really dodged a bullet here in Birmingham, other than the bitter cold. I want to talk about bitter cold in another sense. I left you last week here on Need to Know talking about Greenland and promising you the enticing prospect of talking to you about Greenland, which is something I didn't really envision in the last couple of years of ever having as a broadcast subject. But I think there's a lot of people that don't really understand what this whole story is about, and certainly are not knowledgeable about how we've came to this place where we are right now. And I want to point out some of the absurdity of the past week because our president, Donald Trump, flew over to Europe and attended for the second time. He did it the first year he was president back in 2017, and he's returned to Davos, Switzerland, which is a subject that I talk about a lot. And I promise you, this does tie into Greenland. I'm not off on one of my off ramps and going a different direction. But this all plays into the story because in Davos, they have an annual gathering called the World Economic Conference, the WEC, and it's all the Euro elites, many of them self-designated, many of them silver spooners from generations of the elitist society from all of these European countries. Remember, they used to all be kingdoms with kings and queens, and the succession in politics was when the old man died or the queen took the throne. Well, they moved aside for the next family member up. These were centuries of tradition, and it got so bad and so incestuous in Europe, in even more modern times, that almost all the different kingdoms, all the different countries were ruled by people through direct bloodlines or marriage. They were all related. They were all interactive. A lot of them, the breeding was a little too close to the tree because a lot of these royals developed a terrible condition called hemophilia, where if you just cut your finger, you can't stop the blood flow. And it comes from, like internal breeding, where the and it also just promotes really bad health dilemmas. Anyway, it got that bad. So Europe is this tight-knit kind of hand-me-down. These people aren't kings and queens anymore, but these are a lot of the descendants from the royal families and from the people that were in the inner circles, and they position themselves and carry themselves as these significant spokespeople. They're the international elite, the European, ones to bow down and pay homage to. We've got a class of people just like that in this country that I always tell you about. All of these Ivy League elites, these fourth and fifth generation, silver spooners who've never worked a day in their life, never have to worry about coming up with money or doing anything productive because they are in a special class of people. And these are the biggest supporters and the biggest financial supporters of all of this turmoil in our country now. They were behind getting the election of Joe Biden, who was the worst choice for president you could possibly have made, a complete puppet that did not have any idea what he was doing and was tuned out most of the time because he wasn't mentally acute enough to handle that office. But this is all the maneuvering of this elite class of Americans that are closely related to their European cousins. Anyway, the security of Europe, and of course, now let's talk about our country and Europe. Donald Trump made a couple references to it at the Davos conference that basically, hey, if it wasn't for America, where would you be right now? You'd be all, he even said this, you would all be speaking German and giving the Heil Hitler sign. He says, we came here not only in 1941, but we came here in 1916 in World War I, where the Germans were on the verge of completely taking over Europe the first time and bailed their ass out. France, England, and then really did it in World War II, where the mightiest military machine in the world, Nazi Germany, was just mowing over. They took France in like 2 days, bombing relentlessly England. Churchill begging Franklin Roosevelt to get into the war. So basically, we have gone there with our young people and all of our ingenuity and all of our financing and saved their ass twice. Then after that, of course, after World War II, there was the accord reached that they would split Germany in half, East and West Germany. The Soviet Union would control East Germany. They built the Berlin Wall right in the middle of the capital. The Europeans were on pins and needles, just concerned as hell that the Russians were going to be aggressive and start taking more territory. They had already absorbed so many of the satellite countries that were kind of thrown into play through World War II. Countries that Germany had occupied. The Soviet Union basically had them all in their realm. Places like Poland and others. Bottom line is, NATO, the North American Treaty Organization, was formed to protect Europe from any kind of aggression or expansion into traditional Europe by the Soviets at that time. And the Americans entered into that in the spirit of cooperating with their traditional allies, and the United States became a member of NATO. Now, why we were concerned at that time, of course, with Russian aggression and possible further expansion, is to kind of keep Russia in check. But what this turned into was a de facto welfare state. All these European countries, because America had built up its military might to such a massive degree in World War II, after the beginning of World War II, we were only the 17th. Now think about this. America, the United States of America, was only the 17th ranked country in terms of military ability. Soldiers and equipment and ships and planes and tanks, all the things it takes to be a military power. We were way down the list, but this country completely mobilized. It wasn't about Republicans and Democrats then. We were all Americans, and all Americans rallied to win World War II, to liberate Europe from the clutches of Nazi Germany, and we carried on that tradition of keeping Europe safe by becoming the charter member and the most important member of NATO. But what that kind of boiled into, as years of prosperity took place in America, and the old guard of Europe was so concerned with their stodgy left-wing elitist attitude that America began to pretty much have to pay the bills for the entire deal. The NATO countries were not contributing anywhere near the 2.5% of their gross domestic product they were supposed to. And Trump, in his first administration, went there and called them out, said, we're not going to pay for this crap anymore. We're not going to finance your watching your ass, especially when all of you are importing oil from Russia, which is fueling their aggression. And you see it in Ukraine right now. Anyway, that's the backstory. The most interesting part of this is why Greenland and what does it apply to? Because Trump goes to Davos and says, you know what? I'm tired of this crap. Trump had started talking about Greenland and started talking about getting some American presence there. We've got one air base, actually a Space Force base that does a lot of technical things that I'm not sure I can even explain. But we need a presence there. And right now, astonishingly, and I think most people have probably heard this, but the country that's in control, the country that's in is partnering with the sovereign state of Greenland is Denmark. Yeah, that's not a mistake. Denmark is the lord and master of the giant ice block known as Greenland. And let's just talk about Greenland for a minute. Greenland is 3 times the size of Texas. Have you ever drove through Texas? It takes forever. If you enter the east part of Texas and exit on the western side in New Mexico, I'm telling you, you're driving for seemingly days. It never ends. Greenland's 3 times the size of Texas. Absorb that for a minute. It's the biggest island on the planet. It is basically a frozen chunk of ice with tundra and stuff on top of it. And this is what really gets me in this massive area. The total population of Greenland, which is made up of a handful of Europeans that transplanted there many decades and centuries ago, but it's mostly a native group, the Inuit race, and 57,000. A crappy college football stadium seats 70,000. Only 57,000 people live on this miserable rock of ice out in the middle of the Arctic, at the base of the Arctic Circle. But it is so geographically significant because there's been incursions, there's been presence of Russian and Chinese, influence, just like we're having here in our own hemisphere. Recently, the Venezuelan situation, which we covered thoroughly here on Need to Know. You can't let these guys set up shop in our backyard, and Greenland is certainly in that category. And for Europe as well, because Greenland is kind of the central location between both the United States or the North American and the European continent. So bottom line is we need to commence operations there for a couple reasons: our own security and to prevent the encroachment of Soviet or Russian or, God forbid, North Korea, any of our true adversaries. That is a situation where you wouldn't even have to have really long-range nuclear weapons to attack the United States. It is essential that we have presence there, and it's absolutely inexcusable for the previous presidents. Trump made some inferences of it his first term, but he came determined now to give us presence on this island, which strategically is huge for us. Not to mention the fact that they have other minerals, a lot of these rare earth minerals that we're always talking about that are accessible there. He basically made the offer to. And I love this. I love this, folks. The Kingdom of Denmark is what they call themselves. What the hell year is it? 1820? The Kingdom of Denmark? You're Denmark. You're not the Kingdom of Denmark. What the hell? So anyway, they said, nope, we're not interested in you buying Greenland from us. That's our deal. We are the overseers. We are the owners of Greenland, working in conjunction with the Greenlanders, all 57,000 of them. Greenland is a basically welfare state. Denmark supposedly is supposed to supplement all the people. There's not any industry there. Most people are fishermen or outdoorsmen or whatever they do, but no commerce really in Greenland. So Denmark, of all countries, Denmark is the lord and master of modern day Greenland. Now, That happened because Denmark and Norway, in the era of the 1700s, when exploration to the New World was taking place, they had a couple of misguided joint missions where Norway and Denmark had teamed up to try to make an incursion over to this part of the world and see what they could find out about expanding their kingdoms and whatnot. They discovered Greenland by mistake because they were trying to get to the New World, which is now what we know as the United States. But they landed in Greenland. They had some missionary on the boat, some Danish guy from Denmark, who decided to, bless the land and colonize it and brought some followers over. And that was the initial Danish presence in Greenland. It wasn't like a formal claiming of this land. It was just a missionary basically establishing a colony there. And so that went on for years and years and years. It came to a head in the 1920s when Norway said, hey, we were a part of that too. Norway tried to claim part of Greenland because, again, it's rich in minerals and resources. I mean, there's some value to Greenland. An international court, which I have no idea how that even works, ruled Norway, you got nothing. Denmark has been the keeper of that land for a long time. Well, a funny thing happened just about 20 years later. Denmark was overrun by Germany and taken over by Nazi Germany as they acquired all the surrounding countries in Europe. And to keep the Nazis out of there, Roosevelt and the Americans established a presence in Denmark militarily for the remainder of the war. And then stupidly, after the war ended and Nazi Germany was defeated, the Truman administration gave Greenland back to Denmark. They should have said, screw you, you got overrun. We moved in here. That's how we have a couple of bases, but that's sort of the history of how the Kingdom of Denmark now controls Greenland. And the Kingdom of Denmark has done awful things there because they were committed to taking care of their citizens in regular medical operations. They basically were not even telling these poor people on this island, but they were sterilizing them, basically making them not able to have further children. That's why the population's so poor there, because it was going to be economically crippling for Denmark to take care of, tens of thousands of more people. So they spend next to nothing. They really contribute nothing. And basically, Trump told NATO, you got to push Denmark, a NATO member, because we got it. We got to have this evening. We got to have this island. Not so much for any kind of and all the people that hate America. America's imperialistic. We're trying to take over more territory, Venezuela, Denmark, or Greenland. But these are all critically important strategic locations that we need to have presence in for your safety and my safety and the safety and security of all of our family members and fellow Americans. It's just critical, not to mention the rare earth minerals that could be just huge for our country, which is a huge need now because so much of those particular minerals are used in all of these new products and different technologies that we're routinely using now. So there's just a lot of reasons. They said we're not selling. And then when Trump made some noises about, well, I guess we'll just have to send a military presence and just take what we want. Next thing you know, NATO, who we've financed and funded all these years, NATO sent a group of soldiers, NATO troops from 9 different European countries to Greenland to make sure that it was secure for Denmark. Now, what kind of slap in the face is that? So they're protecting it from us, from the United States? Are you kidding me? It was just a symbolic, stupid, futile gesture on their part. But Trump was clearly insulted, and he should have been, because that was so. We're sending troops to make sure that Greenland is secure from the United States, and yet we are the sugar daddy who has paid for everything and protected them and liberated them a couple of different times. So that's what's going on here. Don't listen to the left. Anything Trump wants or anything Trump tries to do, it's politicized. You hear the same pain in the asses on all these shows. Oh, it's just typical. This is the MAGA way. This is Trump trying to colonialize and expand American territory and intrude on sovereign governments. Greenland would last about 15 minutes if they were under attack by any just even half-assed military force. So if somebody tries to tell you that this is some big imperialistic colonialization that America is undertaking to try and seize Greenland, Greenland is a block of ice that has great strategic value and will improve the security and safety for not only our country, but for Europe and the rest of the world by keeping the aggressors out of that area where they have no business. And if we allowed that to happen, it would be a hell of a tough thing to get them out of there. That would lead to military conflict, and nobody wants that. So a few things on the Greenland front I thought I could acquaint you with. And, probably a lot of you are aware of the modern situation with Trump in Davos talking to all the elites, all these people who know best how to do things. Meanwhile, take a look at their continent, completely overrun with open borders. It's got a huge Muslim presence. It's just a terrible problem in all these stodgy traditional European countries. And just like America, these elites are above all that. They don't have to put up with the day-to-day street crime and the poverty and the absolute bankrupting of all of their governments. They've got their own assets. They just sit back and tell everybody how to think and how to live. Meanwhile, guess what the number one destination for the highest level sex workers in the world is? It is the Davos conference. An estimated 2,500 to 3,000 top level sex workers descend on that, because all the elites, after they discuss all the morals and the great things that Europe has done and all their traditions, they take part apparently in some of the most nefarious acts that you can possibly imagine. And if that doesn't put it in perspective, nothing does. That's what you need to know. Kip Keefer with you, another version in the books. Hope you learned a little bit of something, at least about the history of this, because I don't think a whole lot of people are really following the Kingdom of Denmark and all of their great global contributions, where they really contribute absolutely nothing. I hear Copenhagen's a nice place. I've never been there, but God bless all of you Danes and NATO and all of the elites around the world who know best. I don't think you know best. I don't think you know anything, and you need to just count your money, go away, and leave us alone to run our country the way our forefathers saw fit to do so. I'm Kip Keefer. We'll see you next week on Need to Know.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.